Hello and welcome to the That's So Craven podcast, your Fulham podcast from Down Under. We're here today with Elton and Sam to discuss the Arsenal game coming up on Sunday. Fulham are gunning for form after a disappointing result against Brentford, where we went down 3-2. Looking to turn things round. Here to discuss it all, we have Elton. How are we going?
Hey Jack, how's it going? And hello to everyone listening.
And Sammy. How are we, Sammy?
What's up, party people? Sam doesn't sleep anymore, but he's very happy to be here and a little bit manic.
Oh dear, one of those days for Sam. Right, well, let's get straight into it anyway. So Sunday, Fulham play Arsenal, hosted at Craven Cottage. Obviously, the game against Arsenal early this season at the Emirates. Fulham had a really good start to the season. Unfortunately, that game just slipped out of our hands. A 2-1 loss with a very late goal from Arsenal in that game. Dad, Arsenal been flying pretty much all season, sitting quite comfortably on top of the Premier League at the moment. How are we expecting this game to play out?
Well, yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? When we last met Arsenal, I think we were incredibly optimistic. This was a very new Fulham side in terms of the energy. Anything was possible. It was the beginning of the season. No one really knew where teams sat relative to each other. And we're let's be quite frank here. We're going through a difficult patch. We just seem to be running out of gas. We're hitting Arsenal kind of a little bit on the ropes. Our key guy is somewhere in the Algarve, sipping on a cocktail, it all seems quite difficult. We need to find a way to inject some energy back into this, and I think, if I'm honest, I'm just hoping we turn up and give them a really good game and don't get battered. Is that too negative?
I think that's kind of fair based on the most recent performances. I think that's probably a fair assessment that we're going to the side top of the Premier League. No matter the season you're having, when you play the team on top of the league, you kind of go there expecting to lose. I think this season we've been pretty positive throughout. But Sammy, as Dad mentioned, we're obviously missing Palhinha, and it has had a big impact. We saw that during the Brentford game, how badly he's missed. Do you think if we did have Palhinha, we'd be looking at this game slightly differently, or do you think either way it's going to be a tough ask?
Yeah, honestly, probably not. I genuinely don't see how we win this game. Like, I'm fully here to wax lyrical and fully get into this and break this down, and because I think it's always interesting when you compare teams like this. But honestly, even with Palhinha, I just think they're actually a really good team with a very good structure, and they play very cohesively and very, very well. So I think they're really, really strong. And even with Palhinha, they if you look at players like Odegaard and Xhaka and how they essentially control games, I think it's extremely overwhelming. And that's not even taking into account their front line and essentially the amount of pressure that they put on. It's a huge ask even for a big boy like Palhinha. There's 5 players going at you at any given time for the first half an hour. So yeah, look forward to it.
You don't sound like you're looking forward to it. Let's have a look at some recent form, though. Obviously, Fulham on the left here. Brentford's lost 3-2 that game, but really Fulham have managed to eke out some results. The 2-0 win against Leeds in the Cup, 1-1 draw against a strong Wolves side, a 1-0 win against Brighton, and the 2-0 win against Forest. Still picking up points despite maybe not the most classically beautiful performances, but it's kind of what you need in any season. You need to still pick up points no matter how you go. And then Arsenal in their last 5 games, a 3-2 win against Bournemouth most recently. That was the 96th, 97th minute winner that they scored there. A 4-0 demolition of Everton, a 1-0 win against Leicester, a 4-2 win against Aston Villa, and then the 3-1 loss to Man City, which was a few weeks back. Dad, just looking at that, I know we talk about Arsenal being, a very strong side, but if we look at some of their results, maybe excluding the Everton game, you look at they've recently played Bournemouth, Leicester, and Aston Villa, all sort of either down the bottom of the table or lower mid-table at the moment. Bournemouth was a last-minute winner. Villa, they were 2-2 with about 10 minutes to go, and their fourth goal was after the keeper came up for a corner. Leicester 1-0 win. Do you think there's potentially an opening there for Fulham? Because they're not blowing teams away, except for the Everton game, obviously, but we know that Everton aren't exactly strong this season. But do you think maybe we shouldn't be too doom and gloom about this? Because, they are conceding goals. They conceded 2 to Bournemouth, 2 to Villa. Maybe there is a chance here to get a result.
Can I go just 1 point? Just 1 point. Bournemouth, they came from 2-0 down to go 3-0 back up. That was like really impressive. So I feel like you're a little bit underselling that.
I'm not underselling it. But at the end of the day, you win 3-2 with a last minute winner. It doesn't matter if you come from 2-0 down or if you were 2-0 up and still win with a last minute winner. It's showing that there is the opportunity to potentially get an upset. If Bournemouth can score 2 goals, why can't Fulham?
So thank you, Jack. Thank you, Sam. I agree with you. I agree with you that notwithstanding the fact that, like all very good teams, they are getting results regardless of, I wouldn't say regardless of performances, but allowing modest teams to score goals against you is not a Champions League winning kind of side, in my view. Unfair, but maybe not.
I don't think so.
So the very fact that Bournemouth, got a couple of goals on them, brilliant for Arsenal to come back and win it 3-2, and Arsenal fans were excited and ecstatic to have nicked the game from them, and I understand that because it has a very Brighton feel about it. But they should be destroying Bournemouth, really. And Everton really, four goals, 4-0 against Everton is kind of what you'd be expecting against modest teams. So, unfortunately, you could regard this game as a free hit for us, and it is at home, and that's great. But up to now, unless Marco Silva can pull something out of the hat and somehow regas these players and put them in an oxygen tank for a couple of days and have them, spring out of the blocks on Sunday and do something very, very different from the kickoff from the Brentford game, it's great to have a bit of a free hit, but you need to be energized in order to take best advantage of a free hit. And I'm just concerned that we, for a number of different reasons, bouncing back with high energy to sort of really take this one on might be a little bit too tough for us.
I think that's pretty fair. That it is a free hit, and sometimes you do get results off the back of free hits. And I know at the start of the season we said we weren't going to talk about free hits when we started performing well because we should look to win every game. But there does seem to be an element of fatigue setting in at the moment, and it's potentially mental fatigue, physical fatigue, but they don't quite look 100% at the moment. We've seen a dip in form from Pereira. We've seen a well covered dip in form from Mitro. There's a couple of little errors slipping in from the defence that we're not really used to this season. I saw, Robinson, who's been pretty good all season, get really comfortably turned on the weekend for what turned out to be the winning goal for Brentford. And we just haven't seen that this year. And then when you take out Palhinha from your starting 11, it does make a bit of a difference. And so I think it's going to be a tough game. And, I don't fully agree with Sammy when he said I can't see how we can win this game. I think there's always a way to win these games, but this is going to be a really tough one. And I agree that there doesn't seem many ways we can win this game, but I think it's definitely not out of the question.
I think sorry, Jack.
No,
Sorry,
go
Jack.
ahead.
I think the Metro flat spot is actually a massive factor as well. If Metro was scoring goals and Metro was fit, because I'm suspecting he's not 100% fit, and therefore doing all those other things around the ground that Metro normally does, which really does inject an awful lot of life and creativity going forward into this Fulham team. I think that's a big factor that we're missing at the moment as well.
Yeah, definitely. We are scoring goals from elsewhere, but without your main striker scoring goals, and as we sort of covered in the last podcast, he's only managed 2 since the World Cup. And I don't think he scored since the Leicester game, which was very early January. When you're missing that outlet, and we all know that Mitro's a form player as well, so the rest of his play is definitely being affected by his lack of goals at the moment. And look, I think a goal against Arsenal would do him a world of good. It's possible though, and likely if you look at the goal difference Arsenal have had this year and how good their defense has been most weeks, that we might see another blank from Mitro, and then we've obviously got Man United after that, which they did concede 7 on the weekend, but I wouldn't guarantee Mitro scoring either. So it could be a little lean period again, and we do need that little boost, like you said, just to improve a bit of morale, maybe, or something. Something needs to change, and I think it's tough when you don't have your full first team out there either. And it's fine sometimes when you're missing one player who's a decent team player, but when you're missing someone like Palhinha, who is probably going to win Player of the Season for Fulham this year, it's between him and Leno. Maybe Tim Ream has an outside chance as well, but realistically, Palhinha, Player of the Season, signing of the season. When you take him out, it does make a big difference, and we're starting to see that in the results. Sammy, on the screen now, I've just put up a predicted 11 for this game. I'll just run through it. It's actually the same 11 that I predicted in the last game, with Leno in goal. Across the back, we've got Robinson, Ream, Diop, and Tete. In the midfield, we've got Lukic and Reed sitting behind Pereira. On the wings, we've got Solomon on the left, Willian on the right, and we have Mitro up front. It was actually the first time I've predicted a lineup all season, which is kind of crazy. But
yeah.
Do you think we're going to go with the same 11, or do you think after what was kind of a disappointing performance, Silva's going to make any changes?
I think, honestly, it sounds raucous to say it, but I'm not fully sure if Willian starts, or even if I guess Solomon does start, because five goals in 5 games. Not to say that Willian played badly, but I think for a game like this, he's probably more likely to start Bobby on the right. But again, I don't really know how Silva's brain fully works. He's kind of a mystic in that respect. Sasalukin, like, you don't have an option, I guess. You go.
No, just to go back to your point on Willian, I do kind of see where you're coming from. The one thing to take into account, though, is Willian is playing against this old team, and he does have a bit of a point to prove. He had a really, really bad spell at Arsenal, where the fans, were on his back constantly. He didn't perform to the level he would have wanted to perform.
Yeah.
And so maybe that's one of those games, and we saw it against Chelsea where he was just on fire. Maybe it is one of those games where Willian actually starts and changes the game, even if he's been a little bit off the last few weeks, because he's just got that extra little edge because of the nature of the fixture.
I like that narrative. I don't necessarily believe that, like, that's Willian's nature. He seems like a bit too calm and, like, respectful acceptable, I guess, to be that level of petty. Like if Mitrovic is in the exact same scenario, 100%. But
No, it's not pettiness. It's a want to prove yourself. I don't think it's petty to want to beat your old team.
yeah, but like I almost like I know he went to Arsenal, but it never really felt like he was an Arsenal player. I can see where you're coming from, but I don't know. I just don't necessarily. I almost feel that he's just kind of put that totally behind him. Like I don't know. I feel that like him scoring a goal against Chelsea would probably mean a little bit more because they really are the team that let him go and kind of just said, well, we're a little bit done with you. Arsenal was a weird period in like the Willian narrative story. It's almost like if it was like a film, they would just kind of like cut that bit out, just be like, yeah, we don't really talk about that
Well,
bit. We talk about the redemption
no. If you look at, I'm looking at a quote from Willian here. Just after a year at the club, Willian described it as the worst time he had lived as a professional. So I think if you talk about a time at a club like that, that's pretty bad. Considering as well he mentioned that after he spent time in Brazil and basically got run out of the club.
Yeah, I was about to say like the fact that he's putting his time at Arsenal over that.
Yeah. So look,
you've probably got a point there. To be honest, like I didn't know he like viewed it worse than his time in Brazil. Like that's a lot.
Dad, I do agree with Sam though. I think the link that BDR has, and I know you've talked about it a fair bit. Do you think BDR gets a start because of the relationship he has with Tete and how well they seem to work that wing together? And do you think maybe it's the same for Willian on the left with Robinson, and we do sort of revert back to that and keep Solomon on the bench because of it?
Yeah.
Oh, it's a really difficult one. I think the bigger question is whether you play Willian or Solomon on the left.
Yeah.
To me, I think that's the really big question. We keep saying that William's cool on the left or the right. Career wise, he's played, his fair share on both sides, and I don't doubt that he's capable there. But perhaps his game style of receiving the ball is better suited to Robinson than it is to Tete. Maybe as simple as that.
I think not just that as well. I think it's the fact that he's got such a good relationship with Robinson.
Yeah.
And, they seem to have this ability to not look up, but know exactly where each other is. And he just doesn't have that with Tete because he hasn't played on that wing, which is fine.
And if I was a manager, I would be going with that every time. And
but that then puts Solomon on the bench.
No, I put Solomon on the right. And notwithstanding the fact that Solomon is probably happier on the left, I think he's actually playing better than BDR, and he's better quality than BDR. And I'd back him to, if he gets the ball, to do something incredible. He's that good.
Interesting.
Yeah. I'm not sure if Solomon has played on the right at all in his career. He probably has, but I'm not 100% sure.
But they switch, and he doesn't seem overly out of position when he is there. And I think if what I'm saying is, if you look at the sum of the parts there, Willian, we feel, rightly or wrongly, we feel that the Willian Robinson combo is really potent, right? So go with that, because to actually bring out the best in Willian is something else, because he's very, very effective when he's hot. I think Solomon has got such great individualistic skill, and his quality is so high that he could be playing in Pereira's position, and if he gets the ball, he's a chance to do something damaging with it. And so even if he's slightly out of position, I'd roll the dice on that.
I'm just having a look. It does look like he played a season on the right, although it wasn't a very good season for him, and it was 6 years ago now. So, and he played the very occasional game on the right while he was at Shakhtar as well, as in 1 or 2 games a year. Obviously, filling in more so. But you raised a good point that I was actually going to bring up as well. which is we've seen a dip in form from Pereira recently. Solomon has played in attacking midfield before. Do you think putting Solomon in and giving Pereira a rest, and maybe then putting Willian on the left and Bobby on the right, could give us a bit of an interesting spark and change things up a bit? Because we know how well Solomon drives at goal and he can score. I haven't seen the playmaking ability from Solomon so far. I don't think we've seen many crosses from him or many really top class passes yet. There's been a handful for sure, but I haven't seen that playmaking side to him. But do you think that might be an option, seeing as this could be considered a bit of a free hit?
I cannot imagine Silva doing that and benching or leaving Pereira out, notwithstanding the fact that I think he's had a tough few weeks, and not only has he been quiet, I suppose, there's some frustration that's been creeping in because I think he's disappointed in his own performances. But how can you leave him out in terms of his set piece quality? I mean,
you got Willian, who's also a very good set piece taker,
for sure. But he's been very, very good, and even in his ordinary games, look at last week, that free kick that resulted in a goal, which was almost a goal from his boot. He's very good, and I think we haven't really got a decent replacement for him. I don't believe.
Well, I thought when we signed Sasa Lukic, like he's kind of playing in Polina role right now, but I actually thought that in his first couple of outings when he came off the bench, he actually came off for Pereira, if I'm not mistaken, and he essentially actually was playing that role. And like, I thought he actually looked pretty good there.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought like Lukic would displace Pereira.
No.
It's more a hypothetical that maybe with Pereira's dip in form, you do make a couple of changes. Maybe Pereira is frustrated and actually just needs a rest. And maybe you rest him before the Man United game coming up, which is one that he will really want to, make a big mark on. And then you get Polina back at that point as well. And then maybe you have a bit more clarity around, you play Willian and BDR and look at it and go, actually, these two are our starters, and we just have to find a way to get Solomon in because we can't leave him out. And maybe things change because of that. Maybe at that point you have Solomon, Pereira both playing in attacking mid, and Polina does everything in defensive mid.
Jack, can I pose a question to the group here?
Yeah.
Because I do think we're actually touching on a very interesting point, because I think like sides like Arsenal, Man City, not as much Man United, but they play incredibly system-based football, whereas we're tailoring basically everything to our best performing players. And I'm wondering if that's actually kind of becoming a bit of a disservice for us, because we can't really like chop and change as freely, because we're like one of our biggest stresses at the moment is we can't really fully fit Willian and Solomon in at the same time. And I'm wondering if that's like actually kind of working to our detriment right now.
I know what you're saying, but I don't think we have any other choice.
No, of course.
We don't have a big enough squad to be able to do that. We don't
absolutely, but is that contributing to our fatigue? Like, is that like actually getting us to our?
Yeah,
of course. I agree. We can't rest players because we don't have realistic backups for them who are going to do the job. I think that's totally understandable and definitely an issue that a lot of clubs in our position come up against when they have good seasons like this, where you just can't find players to continue that good form all the time because you're not scraping the bottom of the barrel is the wrong term, but we just don't have the numbers and the talent to be able to do that. So yeah, it's a good point you make, but I just don't think we've got any other option.
No, of course not. But it's just like, it's important to note that we've got a very fragile ecosystem right now, and that kind of stresses me out, to be honest.
But I mean, it's something we'll cover as well when we get to some of the questions that have come in, because it is something that I wouldn't say it stresses me out at the moment because we're having a great season. and
Of course.
we're performing really well. And if you gave anyone 15th in the league before the season started, we would have bitten your hand off. The fact is, we're probably going to finish about 10th this year if we have a bad end to the season. So it doesn't worry me, but there is a bigger question around what happens in the off season, and we will discuss that later when we get into questions. You had a point there, Dad?
Yeah, what I was going to say at the end of the previous set of comments, I was going to say, sadly, I see Pereira and Reed getting flogged till the very last game here without a rest, because
Probably,
Yeah.
because I really feel for them, because they're in hard-working positions, and I just don't see a way out for them. Maybe Reed and Lukic, get into a real battle for that position, and Polina comes in and doesn't get another red, or doesn't get another 5 yellow cards or a red card, and he holds his place. But who's realistically going to replace Pereira unless you really try something creative? And he, say what you like, but he runs his guts out every week.
Oh,
He
totally.
works really hard. He works really, really hard. He looks exhausted at the end of it. And he's still got to produce the quality when he's completely knackered in the second half of the game. He's still got to produce the quality and the concentration from a dead ball opportunity, whether it's a free kick or a corner, right? It's really difficult. But it's one of these situations that it highlights just how remarkable a job Marcus Silva is doing with the cards he's been dealt. And he's it's so often spoken about how he has been masterful, the way he's actually extracted the absolute optimum out of some of these players. Some of these players who might be otherwise regarded as championship level players, like, not being unfair, but guys like Robinson and Tete and Reed are standouts. But if you're performing at that level with your cards in your hand, it like you said, Sam, it is fragile. It has to be slip ups, there has to be burnouts, there has to be fatigue, because you just don't have the options. And I think we're now experiencing that end of the game, where I wouldn't say we've had our fun and it's all over and we've seen the best of it. But his challenge now is that how does he rejuvenate? How does he re-spark? And maybe, and a Mitro, for example, I'll get back to that point. If he's such a emotional player, if Mitro scores, God forbid scores 2, he gets a brace. Mitro is such an excitable, emotional player. The way he gets up when he actually is performing well could be that spark that lifts the whole team and changes our fortunes a bit. And actually gets life into an imagination and belief back into a team that are probably looking for a holiday.
It's so annoying as well, because these aren't really factors that you can control. Like, you can't really control, like,
it's the differences, though. It's the differences
form
in sport, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's the differences and how little things change and affect your season, and both can have a really damaging negative spiraling effect, or turning it round and set you on a run to achieving things you had no right to achieve.
Yeah, of
Fine
course. I mean,
margins.
if you oh no,
I didn't say that.
we'll talk about that. If you look at this game coming up, and hypothetically, and I know it's a crazy hypothetical, but Mitro scores, Pereira scores. Let's say Mitro gets a last minute winner after Pereira scores a free kick earlier in the game. We beat Arsenal 2-1. All of a sudden, I reckon that season turned around, because that's a massive result that gets the club up and running. You've got your talisman, who's really going through a barren patch at the moment, scoring his first goal in 2 months. You got Pereira, who's looking, off, coming back and scoring a goal and getting that little boost. I think, we do need that spark, and I'm hoping it does come. A little comment here for our live viewers on YouTube. Reese Kemp says, Sam is back. Sam, do you have a fun game or quiz organised for today?
I'm so devastated. I almost want to cry because Jack's actually come up with a really good new icon for it as well. So I'm so devastated that I actually don't have one for you, Reese.
I think you need to put your head down for the next 5 minutes and scribble one out on a piece of paper.
I'm so
Sammy.
sorry. Like okay. I'm just gonna like vaguely scroll through what's pop culture right now. Just give me 5 minutes.
Well, while you're doing that, Sammy, let's have a look at the Arsenal lineup. I'll read through it. Now, this is similar to the lineup they played in the last game. We could expect to see some changes. A couple of bits of team news from Arsenal. Trossard went off injured. He started as the central striker, actually, in the game against Bournemouth. He went off injured after 22 minutes, so he's possible to play. Most likely, we'll probably see, I'm guessing, Reece Nelson up front, because I believe Eddie Nketiah also has a bit of an injury as well. But going through the Arsenal team, based on a few little bits of news that I know of at the moment, we've got Ramsdale starting in goal. Across the back, Tomiyasu, Saliba, Gabriel and Zinchenko have been a brilliant back four all season so far. Thomas Partey plays in that defensive midfield position, or as Sam calls it, central down midfield.
I think I call it centre down midfield. Yeah, I call it
centre down midfield. Classic.
Yeah, I'm sticking with that.
I think that's going to stick around. I got a feeling that's going to stick around, Jack.
It
Centre down midfield, Thomas Partey. In the centre midfield, Odegaard, who, as a young skipper, is just having a superb season. And, we always knew he was going to be class when he got snapped up by Real Madrid at 15 or however old he was. But he's actually coming through now and proving that he's a seriously good player, and he's had a great year so far. Fabio Vieira as well, having a good year in the centre for Arsenal. And then on the wings, we've got Saka on the right and Martinelli on the left. We know how dangerous they both are. They're scoring goals for fun at the moment, and they just look dangerous going forward. It's going to be a real task for Robinson and Tete to sort of get a handle on those two, because they're dangerous when they go forward. And then up front, I've put Reece Nelson in there, but we could see Trossard if he's overcome that injury. We could see Nketiah if he's overcome his little knock as well. Dad, you said yourself that you haven't followed Arsenal super closely this season, but looking at that team, do you see any weaknesses there or anything that we should be exploiting?
Can I say no?
No is a fine answer. I mean,
it's a fine answer, man. Like
they're top of the league for a reason.
It's like we gotta be honest.
They have been, I can't say leaking goals, but they haven't been keeping clean sheets to teams who I don't regard as really tough opposition. So that tells you there are opportunities. And I'm with you, Jack. And not only can any footballer or any striker in the Premier League score a goal against anyone individually, they're all that good. Someone like Mitro and Pereira and Solomon and Willian, man, they can score against anyone. So I'm never saying we couldn't put one past Ramsdale or two. If Bournemouth can score 2 goals against Arsenal and really get them to chase the game, but then fail to manage it, why can't we do better than that?
Yeah, I do agree with that.
I'm not calling it. I'm not predicting it. I'm not calling it, but I'm not going to say that could never happen at all. I know that's a pretty rubbish sort of bit of punditry, but
this does feel very much like a game of, well, it could happen, where we're sort of veering away from it and saying, not wanting to say we're going to get pumped, but at the same time,
that's the definition of a free hit, isn't it? It is.
Yeah, of course. Look, I think looking at this lineup, the only real weakness I see, and I wouldn't even call it that much of a weakness, but is Tomiyasu at right back. And I think if you're playing Solomon or Willian on the left, coming up against Tomiyasu, I think there's the potential there. He's quite tall, and I wouldn't say he's quite as agile as some of the wing backs that we come up against in the league. Zinchenko, different story. He's a very solid and quite nimble left back, but Tomiyasu probably doesn't have that ability. And so I think that might be where we see a goal come from. I reckon if Manor Solomon's playing against him, he could cause him some real issues.
Or Willian.
The one thing to say, though, is, it is a very, apart from Zinchenko, it is a very tall back line. Saliba, Gabriel,
That's
Tomiyasu
true, actually.
are all big bodies. And so I think Mitro is going to struggle a little bit there. I'd also say I think if we did have Palhinha playing, it's not the most burly midfield that Arsenal have. Odegaard, Vieira are quite slight. Partey's strong, but he's not a big boy. And so I feel like Palhinha could have bossed that midfield a little bit and got himself about and, made a bit of a nuisance of himself. So it's a shame that we don't have him. And obviously we'll say it over and over again when he's not playing. I think that could have been a little in there for us. And, the other thing as well, I think Saka, Nelson and Martinelli up front and whoever Arsenal play up front, again, they're not tall players. So I feel like Diop and Ream, who are both very good in the air, should hopefully have a handle of any crosses coming in. They do like to play the ball on the floor. But I think we've been very good this season with interceptions. I think Tim Ream reads the game superbly, and hopefully he can cut out some of those. And we know that Tete one-on-one is also superb as well. So I'm hopeful that he can cut out any sort of danger coming from Martinelli. Saka's going to be tough. I think that's going to be a tough day for Robinson. I think that might be where the Arsenal goals come from, down their right wing, with Odegaard and Saka sort of linking up there. I think we could be in for a tough day, but we sort of knew that beforehand anyway. Let's move on and have a look at my top tip. Gamble responsibly. So as we know, I like to have a bit of a look around the betting apps and see what is out there, and a slightly different one this week because most of the time we're going for a Fulham win. This time round, it's an $11.
Oh,
He's paying exceptional odds. I think it's about $7, which for someone who's scored 5 goals in 5 games and having only played, I think he's only played like 180 minutes for those 5 goals, which is just insane. Those odds are very, very tempting. I've gone with a double chance of Arsenal and a draw. Like we've sort of said, we can't really see this one going Fulham's way. I think if it does go our way, we sneak a draw. But realistically, this is an Arsenal win. I've gone for over 2.5 goals. I do see Fulham actually scoring in this game through Manor Solomon. And I think, there was a stat that popped up that against newly promoted sides in all but one game, which was the game... No, sorry, in all games against newly promoted sides this season, it's been over 2.5 goals for Arsenal. That includes the 2-1 victory against us early in the season. So they either score a lot of goals or it's a 2-1 win. So I think over 2.5 goals is a pretty good bet here. Like I said, that gives you odds of $11, which I think for a multi-bet that doesn't seem overly out of the question is actually pretty good odds. Guys, any thoughts on that? Do you see this one coming in?
Sure.
I see Solomon scoring. I do see Solomon potentially scoring. To be honest, I don't think it's going to be a battering. I just don't think we're going to win. So I think Solomon scoring is a very good bet.
From memory, I think Solomon scoring was paying $7.50, which just seems outrageous. And I think that's where the statistics comes into it, saying how many times has someone ever scored 6 goals in a row. So really they're saying, it surely can't continue. I'm saying it does. Dad, your thoughts? So you having a
good statistician, a good statistician would tell you that those are independent events and therefore entirely possible, particularly when you're that good. And also he has no previous form, for any statistician to be basing this on. So I'm saying once again, the underdog here flies under the radar, and I don't think these odds reflect true probabilities or likelihood of outcome.
I guess the reason Solomon, I just looked it up, he is paying $7.50 for an anytime goal scorer. For someone who's scored 5 and 5, that just seems
Yeah,
crazy to me.
yeah, that's not good bookieship or whatever the word is.
Bookie ship.
Bookieing.
Bookie
Yeah, it's a
ship.
word.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just made that up, and it's a
I
word.
love that. That's good. That's
Considering
up there with
that
centre down midfield.
Solomon's odds are very similar to Gabriel's odds for Arsenal scoring in the game. I guess what they're putting it down to is the fact that they're not expecting Fulham to score full stop.
Yeah.
If we look at both teams to score, the odds for that is about evens. So yes,
But that doesn't make sense,
187,
Jack.
no 192.
Doesn't make sense. If Bournemouth scores 2 against Arsenal just last week, how can they say Fulham scores nothing? And who's the most likely goal scorer of Fulham? Solomon.
Yeah, well, they're in here. They've got pretty much everyone else ahead of them. Mitro, Vinicius, Harry Wilson, Willian, Dan James, Pereira, Decordova-Reid, and Manos Solomon. The fact that Dan James is paying $6.50 and Solomon's paying $7.50, that's why that really stands out to me. That's why it stands out to me.
That's
which
FIFA
is
stats.
kind of strange. And then obviously the Arsenal and draw double chance. That's just to cover your bet. Really, I still think realistically you could probably put just a straight out Arsenal win there, which would increase the odds very slightly, I believe. And then the over 2.5 goals, that basically doubles the odds from what we have there. So, look, I think it's. I mean, as with any time you bet, it's a possibility. It's not 100% for sure, but
Gamble responsibly.
But I think when you're looking at odds of $11 for something that, to me, I see a 2-1 win to Arsenal with Solomon scoring Fulham's goal.
Yeah,
if you spruiked that before a game, everyone would go, yeah, that sounds like it could happen. And to get $11 odds for something like that seems like a very, very good value bet. And like we say, this isn't actually about making money. It's about looking at how the bookies are viewing it, and I guess how the media in general are viewing it, and trying to find those little opportunities. And
no, it's not even. It's not even opportunities to make money. It's actually
a quirk is what I meant there. Sorry.
Yeah, it's actually looking at. You're dead right. You're analyzing how the bookies and the media are viewing this, because the bookies must largely be trading off what the media say and what the pundits say.
Yeah. Right. So moving on, before we get into the questions, and we did have quite a few questions come in through Twitter, I just want to pull up one specific tweet. And I don't want to talk about it for too long because it's a subject that's been covered multiple times over the last few years, but the tweet tickled me today. And purely because of the fact that it was in a different language, but I still understood it perfectly. This is the tweet here from Club Bruges. Scott Parker is niet langer hoofdcoach van Club Bruges. Particularly,
you don't have to be a linguist.
That, anyone who can speak a lick of English can work out Scott Parker. And I saw a very funny tweet, and I wish I remembered who it was and could find it again. But someone saying, and Sammy, I'll let you do this. Can you say this tweet, but in a Scottish accent, please?
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. Wait. Scott Parker is niet langer hoofdcoach van Club Bruges.
A terrible accent, but
that ain't bad. That ain't bad.
I'm so glad I got you to do that.
Yeah. Make that a soundbite. Get Alfie to do that next. Get Alfie to do that next.
Sorry, news out of Club Bruges. Scott Parker is no longer the head coach of Club Bruges. He copped the sack after, I think it was a 7-0 aggregate drubbing in the Champions League knockout stages. And, he's had a very poor time at Bruges. He's only been there 3 months. I think they've only won 2 games in that time. They were favourites to actually do well and potentially win the league, and they've dropped right off. And I just thought it was something that is worth noting. And like I said, that tweet just really tickled me, and I really enjoyed Scott Parker's Niet langer hoofdcoach van Club Brugge.
Do you know what really annoys me about Scott Parker? I'm going to talk about this because I want to talk about it. Because, like, you know, we've talked about this a million times.
30 seconds.
Yeah, okay, cool. I just hate comments because I see them all the time of just being like, no, he'll be a great manager one day. Yeah, we love, yeah, no, good on him. Yeah, he's great. He's great. It's just because he's an English player. If he was like Spanish or Dutch, he would be flight out, but he's got a bit of a profile just because of like who he was, and it just annoys me that he just keeps on getting opportunity. Scott Parker was a Champions League manager. That is a sentence.
Yep,
I'm done.
Moving on. Anyway, questions. Sammy, I'll throw it to you first. This is from Dalton D Chain on Twitter. Dalton says, "What positions do we sign to big money deals this next off season?" So I think it's about who we've currently got in the squad, who we make sure we lock down, and also which positions you think we need to strengthen, and try and keep it short without going too deep into it.
Yeah, I will keep it short. Actually, controversially, I think that we do need to sign and put some big money down on a younger defender. We love Tim Ream, we love the story, but long-term options, we're in a position where we can actually lure in some good talent. So I think we should be thinking of the future there. Same as well for Mitrovic. I mean, I know we're speaking like large, like I know he's only about like 28, but still, there is a lot of great young talent in our squad. But there's also a lot of older boys as well. So I think really it would just be beefing the positions of people who are getting slightly older. If we sign Solomon, amazing. We've kind of got that kind of like covered. But even like Bobby Decordova-Reid, he's like, what, 30, maybe pushing 31? So I think just across the park, obviously replacement-wise for like Pereira, that's a no-brainer. But I think we should start realistically thinking about younger talent in positions that we've kind of taken for granted, and we'll do avoid doing what you guys are actually talking about the other day, and just holding on to players for that little bit too long and just getting a bit complacent.
Yep. Dad, same. Keep it short.
Yeah, I think Kazawa goes and leaves Fulham. And I think obviously Cedric is only on loan. I'd say we need a left and a right back replacement or backup. We need another centre back. Tosin probably gets swapped out, but even I wouldn't mind if he stayed. You heard it from me. And I think we obviously we know we need a backup for Pereira. Clearly, we've got to spend money on keeping Solomon, striker, no brainer, and I think Harry Wilson and Dan James leave, and we bring in bigger guns to compete for left and right wing.
Yeah.
Yep, I would agree. I think it's pretty much across the board we need to strengthen. In terms of big money, I'd be throwing some big money at a striker, if not a backup striker, or maybe a striker who can also play on the wing. I think we need to make sure we nail down Solomon. I think we need some strength across the defence as well. Like we said, I think there's actually going to be a lot of outgoings this summer. I think we're going to see quite a number of players leaving the club who have been squad players this season. Like you said, Kazawa, James, Suarez, probably Harry Wilson, maybe Tosin, maybe even Anthony Robinson goes, maybe Palhinha goes. Like there's the potential for a bit of a gutting here. So there's some strengthening required. But I think in terms of big money, I'd like to see us throw it at a striker, a really good backup striker, because I think we're chancing it a bit by bringing in Vinicius on loan, and it's just not been good enough. I think we need someone who we can genuinely rotate Mitro with.
Muniz was the prior example of that. So we've actually, both Muniz and Vinicius, not terrible players, good prospects, but they haven't worked out.
Yeah,
I would. Sorry, you go. Yeah.
Yeah, no. Next one is from Ash here, who's obviously joined us on the podcast at Ash W Wolford on Twitter, and obviously at FFC and me on Twitter as well. Ash says, after an extremely disappointing game on Monday night, do we consider changing shape a bit for this game by either playing a second striker for a variation of play, or do we even go at 5 at the back because of the Arsenal attack, or do we keep it as is and just hope we control the game better? Dad, do you think it's worth a change of shape, or do you think we stick with what we know?
I think interesting ideas, but given what I believe I know of Marcus Silva, I think he's quite conservative. I think he has fairly fixed ideas. I don't think he's one for just shuffling the pack, throwing it up in there, seeing how it lands, or even coming out with something really controversially different. The two up front as just a random idea, great idea, but there have been moments in games where we've had two up front, and for me, if we had a high quality Premier League level striker doing that alongside Mitrovic, that might be really exciting and very interesting. But it hasn't worked, has it? Never has it worked or seemed to be really potent. So I can't see him trying that. I think just system wise, he wouldn't go for 5 at the back. I think there have been a few moments, I can't remember when, against who, but we have had 5 against the back. I think Duffy came on once and was one of the 5 at the back. I can't see, just system wise, I think he's so heavily kind of rooted into what they practice on the training ground. I think that would be way too far for Marco Silva to bring a totally different structure against a team like Arsenal, because it could backfire so incredibly badly.
Yeah, it's too risky. You do that against Sunderland.
Yeah, no, I think we all agree there that I think realistically, and knowing Marco as we know him, which we don't, based on us constantly trying to predict him, I can't see him making huge sweeping changes to a formula that's worked really well for us for his whole time as manager. It's possible because it could be considered a bit of a free hit, but I wouldn't have thought I'd see us go to 5 at the back. And I doubt a second striker in this game, knowing how good Arsenal are going forward, taking someone away from what would be a defensive position would be a bit of a risk, I think. Moving on to our next question. This one's from P. Becker on Twitter, who's at Colts559. Which youth player will make the squad next season, if any? Who's most likely? And is there a championship player you'd like to poach for next year? Sammy, I'll start with you. Youth player?
Oh, that's a really good question. I mean, I want to say Stansfield, but I think it's probably more likely to be Luke Harris. If I'm just talking about players that we've seen, honestly, I think if we do have somebody come through the youth ranks, I think we're dealing with a completely new player. Just I think people develop differently, and I mean we've seen it 1,000 times where you'll have like a really, really strong youth player when they're really, really strong, where they're like between the ages of like 15, 17, and then just kind of like drift off, and then you have players that turn 18 and then all of a sudden they just completely hit their stride. So
you're reckoning we're going to see someone just come out of nowhere, basically?
I think so. Yeah, I think if there was going to be a player in that conversation, in the same way that like Carvalho just kind of like came into the starting lineup, even in the last 2 games of like Scott Parker's tenure, like you could just see it. He was just out and running. Yeah, I think if there's going to be a new player, we would have already seen it by now from the youth team, and I think that's still to come. We have a really good youth squad, so yeah.
Yeah, okay. And a championship player, or are you not a huge follower of the championship?
Not enough. Honestly, I was a much more avid follower last season, but I feel that all of like the good players have actually been poached by like I would have said somebody like Adam Armstrong, but I'm pretty sure he's actually gone to Southampton because I really like him. Yeah, I can't think of, like I'm not as well versed. I've never claimed to be an expert. I'm just claimed to enjoy Fulham.
Yeah. Dad, same to you. Which youth player will make the squad next season?
I really want to believe that Luke Harris is going to make it, but I'm just not sure or convinced at the moment. I'm not seeing it. He's had a couple of small outings in some of the FA Cup games. I thought he did okay. He certainly did embarrass himself. Didn't look like he didn't belong. That's a terrible double negative. But I don't think he was wildly impressive. Not in the same way that Carvalho certainly burst onto the scene and immediately looked like a high impact player. Might have been a bit rough or a little bit raw, but he looked like he could be someone who could fit in quite quickly. Not totally seeing that. Not totally seeing that with Luke Harris. Yeah. What was the name of that championship player that we were recently connected with? The striker that we were talking about.
Gyökeres from Coventry.
Yeah. What's the latest on that?
I have seen again that we are interested and we maybe have opened talks. I don't know how much is true in that reporting, but he would probably be my pick as well. The other person, I'll just take over now. The other person I think would be a really good pickup would be Ben Brereton Diaz from Blackburn.
Oh, true, actually.
He's only 23. Had a really, really good season last year. I'm not sure how he's going this season so far. But I think when you've got a young player like that, he's already worth a fair whack. He's got 10 goals and 32 appearances. I think he scored 20 plus last season. He looks like the kind of player who would be a really, really good pickup for Fulham. A young striker who's proven to score goals. I think the problem with Vinicius a little bit is that he wasn't a proven goal scorer. He'd scored a handful of goals, but we need someone who's banging them in a little bit more regularly.
Brereton Diaz a Jamie Vardy.
Yeah, but everybody needs a Jamie
Try finding someone like that. But
yeah.
I mean, Brereton Diaz, he's played 100. He plays on both wings as well. He's played 100 games as a central striker and scored 30 odd goals. He's also played 50 games on the left wing and 40 games on the right wing as well. So it's one of those options where you could use him as a backup winger, but you'd also have him as your backup striker. I think Gyökeres is a pretty similar option there. Go on, Sam.
I just came up with one. I would take Jobe Bellingham from Birmingham just to be basic and just to roll with the genetic statistics.
I mean, it's probably not the worst idea. I did think he got signed up by wherever is it Dortmund?
Yeah,
Jude Bellingham's at. Yeah, I thought he got signed up by Dortmund, but not 100% sure there. And in terms of the youth player to make the squad next season, I could see Tyrese Francois actually having a good year for us. I know he's not made a huge impact, and I think Luke Harris is the obvious option, but I think Francois is a decent little player playing in centre mid. I don't think he's had an opportunity yet. Maybe we're just saying that, or I'm just saying it because he's Australian as well. But he's getting some appearances now while he's on loan, which I think is really positive. He's obviously back at Fulham now after his loan deal. He was out in Croatia, I think, for a while, and had a pretty good spell. They got a few appearances under his belt. The other one who's having a really good loan spell at the moment is Tay Ashby Hammond. He's a goalkeeper. I can't remember exactly which team he's at, which is going to really annoy me. Let me quickly look it up. He is currently playing for Stevenage. Now, admittedly, it's not the heights of the Premier League or even the Championship, but we see it a lot with keepers. And you look at people like Joe Hart and who's the Everton keeper, the England keeper? What's his face?
Pickford.
Pickford, they go out on these loan deals to lower league clubs. And the best thing about it, and it's what you don't see with some of these outfield players, they don't get the opportunity when they're playing outfield. But when you're a young keeper, you're given the opportunity at a lower league club. He's got 130 appearances under his belt now. as a 23-year-old. He spent 3 years at Maidenhead. He's spent a year now at Boreham Wood, and now he's up in League Two. And I saw he's currently injured, and I saw a really interesting Twitter thread, which was a Stevenage fan breaking down why their team is so much worse off while Ashby Hammond is injured, because he's saying he has this huge influence. And it sort of read like we would write an article if Bernd Leno got injured and Rodak had to come in goal. He was saying Ashby Hammond is confident. I saw a comment, someone saying if a nuclear bomb dropped, Tay Ashby Hammond would still be standing at the bar sipping on his beer. He's that cool, calm, and collected. And I think he's not going to get a start anytime soon over Bernd Leno, but I'd like to see someone like that actually come through and maybe take Rodak's position as the cup keeper. And that could be quite an interesting one next year, because he's been on our books for a very long time. I think he spent his whole youth career at Fulham. I'm pretty sure he joined as like a 10-year-old or something like that. So he's been with us for years and years and years. He's got a couple of England under 16s and under 17s caps under his belt. I'd really like to see him actually come through and get a few games. Just a weird little one that I saw on Twitter, which I thought was really interesting. We've come to the end of the podcast, and fortunately for you, Reese, especially, Sam has managed to come up with something. And for those of us following along live, I've managed to expertly Photoshop a hat onto Sam's head. Sam, what do we got?
This is the dumbest one. This is so dumb. So, okay. Tony Khan, the megalomaniac genius that he is taking over in this scenario. He is taking over all the major television networks. So what that means is he needs to recast some of his television shows. But obviously he wants to promote Fulham while he's doing that. So in this scenario, we're recasting Friends with Fulham players. This is what I came up with, Reese. God bless
You've done
This
very
is some,
well, I have to give you something, because that's not a bad idea.
Yeah. This is some of my finest work. Okay, so start, and like I'll just refresh your memory on Friends. So let's start with Phoebe Buffay, chaotic but also kind of brilliant. So Robinson or Kazawa?
Kazawa, he seems a bit loopy to me.
Yeah.
Not Robinson. Robinson's too analytical, and he plays piano fairly classically. Does magic card tricks. He's seems a bit of an ordered thinker. Phoebe
Have you
Buffay,
seen him talk though? He's very
no. Phoebe Buffay she's an Aries, man,
an Aries,
or possibly a Capricorn.
You with astrology, I was not expecting that.
You've gone down in my estimations there, Dad.
Okay.
Go on, Sammy. What's the next one?
The depth and breadth of my knowledge.
Monica Geller, Pereira or Reed? Harrison.
I didn't know she had a second name.
Probably Reed.
Yeah, just that manic.
Yeah.
Chaos.
Yep.
Hang on. So, Monica,
bit uptight, very OCD.
Yeah,
Pereira's too laid back. Pereira's too laid back.
No, I think he's quite anxiously Latin, actually.
Maybe
anxiously Latin is a sentence that you said. Okay, I quite like this one. Chandler, Mitrovic, or Harrison Wilson? Oh, sorry, Harry Wilson. Harrison Wilson. Just passionate.
Mitro.
I'm just thinking flailing. I'm just thinking
Mitro,
down on themselves. Yeah,
just
I think
the wild mood swings. Mitro.
Yeah. Okay. Now, Dad, did you have?
No. I was going to go Mitro only on the basis that it's definitely not Harry Wilson.
Yeah. Okay. Rachel, Solomon, or William?
William. It's all about the hair.
Really? I was going to say Solomon. I was
No,
gonna
with
say-
Rachel. Rachel was all about the hair. I think Willian's all about the hair.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay.
I'm not seeing either of them.
Joey, Tom Kearney or Shane Duffy?
Tom Kearney. It's the
Tom
looks.
Kearney. No,
the
not
man.
only. Apparently, Tom Kearney, by all accounts, is a massive joker, and he's
I saw it, yeah.
constantly taking the piss. And you
I
know,
feel like
Shane
Shane
Duffy, though,
Duffy's
as
doing
well.
that as well.
Duffy's the same.
okay.
But Kearney for the looks for me.
All right. Okay.
Gorgeous,
All right, okay.
gorgeous man.
All right.
Okay.
And Alfie's new favourite player as well. He's moved on from Mitro because the poor form, I think. But
Oh, bless. And this one's my favorite. Ross Geller, Marco Silva, or Polina?
Ooh. I think Marco Silva
I
actually.
think so as well.
I'm going Polina.
Fair
think,
enough. Red Ross, Rage.
Yeah, and I think Polina probably likes dinosaurs.
I could see that. No, fully paid in full. I'll give you that one.
You think Marco Silva doesn't have any rage?
I think Polina is secretly geeky, very cool, but also secretly quite geeky.
I don't think he's secretly geeky. He looks pretty geeky.
I don't think
to
he's
me.
any
He
secret.
just looks like he could kill you. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yep.
I was going to say you did well there, Sammy, for knocking that together last minute. I commend you.
Thank you. I was doing that while you were doing the Arsenal lineup, to be honest.
It's probably a more exciting thing than talking about Arsenal, to be fair. So, look, guys, let's wrap it up there. It's been good to actually talk through this game. I think we've sort of agreed that it feels like a bit of a free hit, and hopefully we take that chance and we get those chances. Hopefully, Mitro gets his head on one, scores a goal. Maybe we upset the odds a little bit here and see Fulham walk away with. I think even 1 point from this game would be a really good result for us. If we took all three, it would be insane. So, look, Sammy, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you very much. I apologize for my tiredness and manic energy, but I feel like it added some extra sauce. Yeah.
You did good. And Dad, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. Enjoyed the chat and good podcast, lads.
A big thank you as well to everyone who's followed us along on the live stream on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Twitch. It's really appreciated. We also really appreciate everyone who's followed us on Twitter. Please make sure you do, share all of our content so that more Fulham fans can discover the podcast and get involved. We really, really enjoy doing this. We do it for the fans. So, guys, until next time, come on, you Whites.